I stood in front of my luggage, meticulously folding the last of my dress shirts before zipping it closed. The hotel reservations were verified, my schedule was established, and my presentation was polished down to the last detail. This business trip had been months in the making, a chance I couldn't afford to miss. It wasn't just another meeting. It was a pitch that could secure the biggest transaction of my career. But despite my thorough preparation, there was an unease gnawing at me, a feeling I couldn't quite shake. I turned my head slightly, peering, toward the hallway, where my 12-year-old daughter Zoe was sprawled across the couch, buried in her book. Her long brown hair cascaded over her face as she absent-mindedly twisted a loose thread between her fingers. My wife, Kara, had already left earlier in the day, heading off on a week-long vacation with her mother. It wasn't unusual for her to take these getaways, especially while I was out of town. She always claimed it was her way of getting some much-needed rest while I was busy with work. Typically, I didn't mind. But this time was different. She hadn't taken Zoe with her. The plan, as she had told me, was that Zoe would stay home. She's old enough, Kara had said with a breezy wave of her hand. She can handle a few days on her own. She's independent, Jared. Independent? Maybe. But leaving a 12-year-old alone for several days? It didn't sit right with me, I had opposed. I had suggested that Zoe stay with a friend, or maybe her aunt. But Kara had brushed off my concerns, just like she always did whenever I questioned her plans. She'll be fine, she had insisted. She's got her phone. There's food in the fridge. She knows how to take care of herself. Even now, as I checked my watch and glanced at my boarding pass, I felt that nagging doubt creeping back in. Zoe must have noticed, because she lifted her gaze from her book, her expression unreadable. "You're going now?" I mustered a smile, and walked over, sitting beside her on the couch. "Yeah, kid. My flight's in a couple of hours." She shut her book and sat up a little straighter. "You sure I'll be comfortable here alone?" Her voice was soft, hesitant. She wasn't the type to complain. If anything, she was more mature than other kids her age. But I could tell. She was nervous, too. I exhaled gently, taking her hand in mine, holding it, reassuring her. "You'll be okay, Zoe. I've set everything up. Your meals are ready in the fridge. The security system is on, and you can call me anytime." I squeezed her hand. "I mean it. Anytime." Her lips curled into a small, uncertain smile. "Even if it's the middle of the night?" "Especially if it's the middle of the night," I said with a chuckle, nudging her lightly. "You know I barely sleep anyway." She leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. "I wish Mom didn't leave." I swallowed hard, feeling a strange pressure in my chest. "Yeah," I whispered. "Me too." Zoe wasn't one to voice her emotions so openly, but there was something in her words, something in the way she clung to me in that moment, that made me feel even worse about leaving. I cleared my throat and stood up. "Okay, kid. Give me a hug before I go." She flung her arms around me, and I held her close, inhaling the faint scent of her shampoo. I wanted to stay. I wanted to cancel my flight. I wanted to tell my boss that nothing was more important than my daughter. But this deal was crucial, and I had accepted Kara's judgment, even though, deep down, something felt wrong. I pulled back, looking her in the eyes. "If anything happens, you call me. Right away. Okay?" Zoe nodded. "I will." I kissed the top of her head, then grabbed my suitcase and walked toward the door. Just as I stepped outside, I turned for one last glance. She was still sitting there, clutching her book, but her eyes, they were locked onto me, like she was memorizing this moment. I forced a reassuring smile. "Love you, kid. Love you too, Dad." And with that, I locked the door behind me and walked to the car, my stomach twisting with unease. The ride to the airport felt longer than usual. My driver chatted about sports, about the weather, but I barely heard a word. My mind kept replaying the morning, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine, that Zoe was safe, that Kara wouldn't have left her without a backup plan. Right? I kept telling myself that, but I had no idea just how wrong I was. The trip was smooth, but my thoughts, anything but. I kept checking my phone, watching for notifications, feeling at any moment like something would go wrong. It was ridiculous. I assured myself. Zoe was home, safe. I had checked everything: food, security, emergency contacts. But still, something gnawed at me. That unease. It wouldn't go away. I forced myself to focus. The upcoming presentation was critical. It could make or break the deal I had spent months working on. I flipped open my laptop, reviewing my slides, but the words blurred together. My mind kept drifting back home. Hours passed. By the time the plane landed, night had already fallen, and the moment I switched off airplane mode, my phone buzzed in my hand. The screen lit up. Zoe, a cold shudder ran down my spine. I answered immediately. Zoe? Her voice came through, shaking. Dad. I can't get into the house. My heart dropped. What? What do you mean? I tried my key, but the door won't open. I think the locks were changed. My breath caught in my throat. What? I don't know what to do. Her voice cracked. It's dark and She sniffled. My daughter never cried. She was strong, independent. But right now, she sounded so small, so afraid. I shot up from my seat, grabbing my bag. Zoe, listen to me. Where are you right now? In front of the house. I've been knocking, but no one's answering. Mom's not picking up her phone. I cursed under my breath, my pulse pounding in my ears. Kara. What the hell had she done? Stay on the phone. With me, I said, my voice sharp now. Go around the house. Try the back door. Maybe the key works there. I heard rustling as she moved. Then her voice came back, small. It's locked, too. A lump formed in my throat. What do I do, Dad? I don't have anywhere to go. I raked a hand through my hair, forcing myself to think. Okay. Stay. Calm. You're not alone. I'm here. I glanced around the airport at the people walking past me, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I'm going to call your mom, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Stay close to the house. Don't go anywhere. Do you hear me? She sniffled again. Okay. I ended the call and immediately dialed Kara. It rang and rang. Then just before it went to voicemail, she picked up. Laughter in the background. Not hers, her mother's. I gritted my teeth. Kara! Then, with ice in my voice, what the hell did you do? She was about to learn what repercussions actually felt like. The morning after my call with the lawyer, I found myself standing outside Zoe's bedroom door, uneasy. It wasn't like me to pause. I had spent years making tough decisions in business, executing million-dollar transactions without a second thought. Yet when it came to my daughter, the stakes were different. I knocked quietly. There was a delay. Then the gentle sound of blankets rustling. A few seconds later, the door cracked open. Zoe stood there in her large hoodie, her brown hair a tangled mess from sleep. She looked fatigued, her eyes darkened, her face pale. It hit me then just how much this had affected her. She wasn't just weary, she was pained. Hey, youngster, I said gently. She moved back, letting me in. I sat on the edge of her bed while she went back under the blankets, cuddling her pillow. She didn't say anything but looked at me, waiting. I ran a hand through my hair, inhaling. Listen, Zoe, I need to tell you something. Her look didn't change, yet I saw the small shift in her eyes, the way she braced herself like she was preparing for bad news. I hated that she had to feel that way. I softened my voice. Your mom's not coming back, not anytime soon. her fingers curled around the pillow. I know. I blinked. You do? She nodded, looking down. I saw the images, Dad, on Instagram. I felt my stomach plummet. I had tried to keep her away from it, had hoped she wouldn't go looking. But of course she had. She was 12, but she was smart. And unlike me, she had never been ignorant of Kara's greed. I let out a deep breath. I'm sorry, Zoe. She shrugged, but her voice trembled. It's not your fault. Maybe not, but it sure seemed like it. For years I had disregarded the signs. I had convinced myself that Kara's coldness, her detachment, was transitory. I had clung to the idea that she was still the woman I married, that the version of her who laughed with me, who held Zoe as a newborn, who had once been my best friend, was still in there somewhere. I had been wrong. Zoe bit her lip. So, what happens now? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. I filed. I want complete custody. That means you'll be with me from now on and your mom won't be able to take you away. Zoe stared at me, wide-eyed. She sought to take me? I hesitated, then nodded. I don't trust her, Zoe, and I'm not going to let her walk back in here when she feels like it and mess with your life again. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, in a soft voice, she questioned, Do you believe she ever loved me? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Zoe. She glanced away, her fingers gripping the blanket. She never truly cared, did she? I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her that, yes, her mother had loved her, that there had been some purpose behind all of this, some error, some explanation that made it all make sense. But I wasn't going to lie to her. Not anymore. I don't know, I admitted, my voice hard. But what I do know is that you are the most important person in my life, and I will never leave you. Ever. Her bottom lip shook. For a second, I thought she was going to cry. But she merely nodded, holding on to my words like they were the only thing keeping her stable. I reached out and smoothed her hair back. We're going to be okay, baby. I promise. She nodded again. Okay. I forced a smile. Now how about some pancakes? Extra chocolate chips? It got a small, reluctant smile out of her. Yeah. That sounds delicious. I patted her palm before standing up. Okay, right. Give me 10 minutes. As I headed to the kitchen, I felt a weight settle in my chest. Zoe had spent years learning how to be okay with disappointment. I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure she never had to feel that way again. I was halfway through frying pancakes when my phone buzzed. I dried my hands on a towel and examined the screen. Kara. I stared at the name for a second before, groaning and replying. What do you want? You cut off my money, she replied, her voice harsh, accusatory. I smirked. Took you long enough to see. This isn't funny, Jared, she snapped. I need that money. I leaned against the counter. No, you want that money. You need to acquire a job. You think this is a game? She hissed. You think you can just cut me off and wreck my life? Funny, I mused. That's exactly what you did to Zoe. A lengthy silence, then an annoyed sneer. Oh, please. She's fine. You're making such a huge deal out of nothing. She's not a baby, Jared. She's 12, I snapped. She sat outside her home afraid and alone because of you. But of course you don't care, do you? Kara breathed harshly. You always act like such a saint, Jared. Like you're the perfect dad. Newsflash, you're not. Maybe not, I said, my voice icy. But at least I'm here. She let out a bitter chuckle. You're punishing me.